Welcome back to our course on PowerPoint 2013. In this section we're going to look at SmartArt. It's a relatively new feature. It was actually introduced in PowerPoint 2007 and it is a good way of showing information where you need a fairly complex diagram in order to represent the information fully. Now, to some extent you can draw complex diagrams using the shape drawing procedures we've looked at already, together with merging and grouping of shapes. But with SmartArt, a lot of the hard work is done for you, and in addition to that hard work being done for you, it's done in a way that makes SmartArt a very flexible facility. So let's take a look at a straightforward example. First of all, to insert SmartArt, go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and in the Illustrations group, one of the options is SmartArt. Now when you click on Insert SmartArt, you get a dialog, Choose a SmartArt graphic. The graphics you can use are categorized, and the categories are on the left, so you have List, Process, Cycle, Hierarchy, etc. And selected at the top is All, so we have all of the types of SmartArt graphic in the gallery in the center. Now let's suppose on this occasion that I'm going to enter a hierarchy SmartArt graphic, so click on Hierarchy, and one of the most common types of hierarchy is the sort of hierarchy you get in a business organization. So I'm going to choose the first option there, an organization chart. Now when you choose one of these options, on the right you get a representation of what you will get to begin with. So the initial graphic will look like that. And then below that there is a description of what that particular SmartArt graphic does. Now one of the key points about SmartArt graphics is that you're going to start from that initial one there, with somebody at the top of a hierarchy and then something sort of sticking out the side here and then three at the bottom. But the smart part of SmartArt is that to change that to your exact requirements should be a very straightforward job, as we will see. So I'm going to choose this one. Let's click on OK and customize it to our specific requirements. Now the first thing to note here is that we have two additional tabs on the ribbon. We have under SmartArt Tools, we have a Design tab and a Format tab. Now, very roughly speaking, the Design tab lets us change the shape, the layout, the overall style of the SmartArt graphic we're creating. The Format tab lets us go in and change some aspects of the format, both of the overall graphic and of the individual elements that make up the graphic. First of all, I've inserted this SmartArt graphic onto a blank slide. And one of the objects in the graphic is selected. It's the individual box at the very top of the hierarchy. But also you can see selection handles for the whole graphic. The group of objects that are actually sort of glued together in this SmartArt graphic have a selection box around them and sizing handles. Watch what happens if I pull on one of those corner sizing handles. I'm going to pull on the top left one. Look not only at the size of the overall graphic, but at the individual boxes within it. Let me pull up to the top left. Release. Now you should have noticed that not only the whole graphic got bigger, but the individual elements within it grew as well. Let me do that again at the bottom right. And again you can see the individual boxes getting bigger. One aspect of SmartArt is that it automatically resizes the elements within a piece of SmartArt to fill the space available. Now let me click back on the top item in that hierarchy again, and I can treat that item as an individual graphic as well. So if I wanted to make that individual graphic larger or smaller, let's pull it by one of its corners. I can make the individual graphic bigger as well, and the others will make themselves smaller if they need to, in order to keep the overall shape, legibility and usability of the SmartArt graphic. Now let's turn our attention to that Design tab. One of the groups on the Design tab is the Layouts group, and within that there is a gallery of layouts that are relevant to the type of graphic we've got. In fact, you get the same gallery for the hierarchies that we saw right at the beginning. And you can basically change the current chart to one of these other options just by selecting it from that gallery. And of course, as you can see, you get live preview. So if you'd prefer things to be like that, or like that, or like that, it's straightforward enough to do. Some of these are more complex than others. So for instance, the second option there includes not only the hierarchy of the organization, but there's a space in each of the smaller boxes there to put a photo. So if you wanted to put together an organizational chart for your company or your department, or even for your family if you like, you could put the individual photos in there as well. So for the moment, for this example, I'm going to stick with the layout that we started with. Now let's look at SmartArt Styles, which is the next group on the Design tab. With this, given the current selection of layouts, we get different styles. So for instance, if I wanted to go a little bit 3D, I could go like that, brick scene that is, or like that. Or I can add a little bit of depth by going into cartoon style, or of course I can stick with one of the 2D styles as well. So you can choose the one that suits the particular style that you want to achieve. Now, one of the options over on the right here in the Reset group is Reset Graphic. Discard all of the formatting changes made to the SmartArt graphic. If you get part way through changing the layout and the style and other formatting changes, you can always reset it to the original format by using that button. So now let's suppose that I want to actually make this SmartArt graphic show the organizational structure in a department. To put the text in the boxes, they really are just placeholders, so you can click within there. Let's say that at the top of the hierarchy we have, note that as I type this person's name, SmartArt will resize the font to fit the name in. So that's the person at the top of the hierarchy. Let's now go down to the person who is the PA for the boss. And then we can start working on the people in the department. Now, I'll put those three names in and then we'll make a couple of changes. Now there is my initial departmental structure. Note that Li Nang, the box for Li Nang, is the selected individual box at the moment. Let's now suppose that a new person is joining the department. So this will be a person that operates at the same level as Lee and Victor and Sue. I go to the Create Graphic group on the Design tab. Top left hand corner there's an Add Shape command. Click on the drop down and I get a number of options for where to add a shape. Now Add Shape After will add somebody effectively to the right of Li Nang. So it's a person at the same hierarchical level but to the right of Li. Add Shape Before, it will be somebody at the same level before Li on the left. Add Shape Above will mean somebody else that Li Nang is going to report to. Add Shape Below will be somebody reporting to Li. Add an Assistant will give Li an assistant. Let's go for Add Shape After and watch what happens when I click that to the overall departmental structure. I get a fourth person at that sort of bottom tier in the departmental hierarchy, but everything resizes to accommodate that. So I've added the name for that new person, and you can begin to see here really what we mean by SmartArt, because as I add to this structure, the overall structure adjusts itself and the individual elements within it to accommodate the changes I'm making, in this case to a hierarchy. So again, if I now have Joe selected and I decide that Joe is going to have a person reporting to them, not an assistant but somebody that works for Joe, again make sure Joe's selected, click on the drop down next to Add Shape, do Add Shape Below, and I'll get somebody who's going to report to Joe. And just one other thing here, let's suppose that somebody leaves the organisation, so let's suppose that Victor leaves. If I click Victor's shape within the departmental structure diagram, all I need to do is to press the delete key. Victor's taken out of the departmental structure and everything else adjusts itself accordingly. Now, exactly what you can do in a smart art graphic depends on the graphic itself. So some graphics, processes, cycles and so on, although they'll have some of the same functions, particularly in relation to this create graphic group, some will allow some things, some others, depending on exactly what the graphic is. The organization chart like this is one of the most common and popular ones that people use in PowerPoint presentations, but some of the others that you don't see so often can have different kinds of operation that you can perform on them. Let's now take a look at a couple of things on the Format tab. If I click on Format, you notice we have a Shape Styles group here, similar to the equivalent group that we've seen before when we were looking at shapes in general. One of the things to be a little bit careful of here is when you're looking at a smart art graphic, be aware of whether you've got the whole graphic selected or an individual component in it. At the moment I've got a whole graphic selected, and with a whole graphic selected, if I say went to Shape Fill, I wouldn't be filling the shape of one of those boxes, I'd be filling the shape of the whole thing. So for instance, if I go down to Gradient and maybe choose one of those light blue types of gradient, what I've done there is to fill the background, if you like, of the graphic, the overall graphic. Whereas if I chose an individual shape like Emilia Sanchez and went into Shape Fill for Emilia, maybe again went to Gradient, one of the darker gradients, clicked on OK, I would be filling one of the individual graphics within the overall smart art graphic. And so again, at the moment I've got Emilia Sanchez's box selected. If I click somewhere in the graphic, not in that specific box but in the overall graphic, then I have the whole graphic selected. And if I say went to Shape Outline and chose an outline for the overall shape, maybe nice thick black line, and then again for the outline I chose a color of that sort of dark color, click outside, you can see how I've put a border around the overall graphic. So finally I have an exercise now for you to do. I've gone back to my presentation on the UK Parliament. I'd like you to go back to your presentation of your government or your club, society, company, department, whatever one you've been working on so far. And I'm going to insert a slide explaining graphically some of the functions of the House of Commons in this case. Now what I'm going to do is to put in a kind of hierarchy chart. I've really divided the functions up into 5 groups. So what I'm going to do here is click inside the box where the chart's going, click on Insert, then I'm going into Smart Art and I'm going to choose a hierarchy. I'm going to choose a very straightforward hierarchy. I'm just going to use that one. The organisation chart again. Now in this case I don't need an assistant, so select that and delete it. And I do need 5 boxes at the lower level to accommodate the 5 main functions. So at the top I'm going to put House of Commons. The first of these is going to be legislation. The next one of them will be executive scrutiny. There are 5 of those. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a little bit of work on the style, the presentation of that. And that's going to produce example 8 from the supplied files that come with the course. What I'd like you to do is to add a similar slide to your presentation. So it can be any kind of smart art graphic. It can illustrate somebody's responsibilities. It could even illustrate the reporting lines, the executive structure, boss at the top, vice presidents in the middle level, employees below, whatever you like, but at least one smart art graphic. As I say, my answer to that is example 8, and I'll see you in the next section.